Part 21. Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, Tien. Chapter 201. So when I sneered. The old lady could really say it. I really can't understand what my mother-in-law said. What does my mother-in-law mean by the family fortune earned by my husband? When we separated, we divided the 4 rooms. Everything was written clearly. Except for the 2 old houses, not even the land was allocated. The total would not exceed 5 taels of silver. My mother-in-law would not think that these few months were fair. Is the official getting rich? The sarcasm in Su Wenayu's words was undisguised. As for the money Hanyu gave her, Su Wenayu knew that Hanyu definitely didn't tell the old lady, so naturally she wouldn't tell it, lest the old lady think she had some leverage and make a fuss. The facts were clearly there. Yang wanted to refute but couldn't say anything. She blushed. Her son had also said before that many things in the family were now subsidized by her daughter-in-law. In other words, what she had been saying these days was the property she helped her son look after was actually her daughter-in-law's dowry, and she had no room to comment. What do you mean? Are you saying that my Yuer is a soft-boiled person and depends on you to support him? Yang knew in her heart that she was not paying attention, but she couldn't bear to lose face and insisted on fighting for something, and in her heart what bothered her most was that someone said that about her son. In fact, she had these thoughts in her heart and felt short of breath. My mother-in-law said this. I didn't say that. My husband worked hard in the military camp and relied on his own ability. As for the dowry I brought, my husband has never asked me about it. Naturally, he will not care whether I spend it or not. I don't have to worry about the expenses for my mother-in-law. Even if the dowry I brought is spent, it's my own business. As a mother-in-law, she covets her daughter-in-law's dowry. It won't sound good if such a thing spreads, Su Wenayu said in a cold tone. Said. You. What are you talking about? When have I ever coveted your dowry? My old lady is not so shameless. You, Mrs. Su, how dare you wrong your mother-in-law like this? Mrs. Yang pointed at Su Wenayu. I really don't have any thoughts about my daughter-in-law's dowry, I just think about what's good for the family. This is definitely slander, but I don't know that what she did before was indeed suspected. No, it should be said that she did do it, but it was her own fault. Just numb yourself. I don't dare to accuse my mother-in-law wrongly. I can't help you if you insist on talking about yourself. But since my mother-in-law doesn't have this intention, I'd better ignore some things in the future and treat them as avoiding suspicion. Su Wenayu had a very tough attitude towards Yang. This person, if you have a softer attitude, it will be a bad thing. As for Hanyu, she has tolerated it for so long before, so Hanyu must understand. Okay, this is the good daughter-in-law that our Han family has brought back. She has become an official's wife. She dislikes me as an old woman. Mrs. Yang is really a bit of a bully. Seeing Su Wenayu's tough attitude, she didn't insist on doing anything. I just feel aggrieved. I worry about this family wholeheartedly and being treated like a donkey with good intentions. I must talk to my son properly when he comes back. Old man Han was afraid that something would happen, so he had been following the old lady just now. He originally wanted to dissuade the old lady, but thinking that his daughter-in-law was too extravagant to run the house, he thought it would be better to let the old lady give her some advice. She must live a careful life. The 4th daughter-in-law is too extravagant, and now even outsiders are brought in to raise her at home, which is indeed a bit outrageous. Old man Han is still a sensible person, but after all, his background is different, and the things he can think of are also different. Seeing his old wife being contradicted by his daughter-in-law, old man Han felt a little uncomfortable. However, his daughter-in-law was not too excessive after all, but her words were a little disrespectful. Her words were not completely unreasonable. After all, there was something wrong with the old woman. What's more, my daughter-in-law is still pregnant, so even if I want to reason, it's not the right time. Let's go. Seeing the old woman so sad and angry, old man Han sighed and pulled her away. The fourth daughter-in-law has always had ideas. If the old woman continues to make trouble, she won't get any advantage. After all, the fourth daughter-in-law is still on the reasonable side. Even if the fourth child comes back, he may not be on the old woman's side. The son cannot help his mother. After all, it is the son and his daughter-in-law who have to live their whole lives. Su Wenyu was a little more respectful when she saw old man Han appearing. After all, old man Han was a relatively tolerant and sensible elder, and he was also her father-in-law, so she respected him from the bottom of her heart. Dad, there are some things that my mother has gone wrong about, and the daughter-in-law is really in a difficult position. I don't mean to contradict my mother. I hope that my father can give me some advice. If my daughter-in-law is not considerate in any way, feel free to point it out. My daughter-in-law will try her best to do better. Seeing that old man Han was still very respectful towards him, the discomfort in his heart dissipated a little, and he nodded and left. When Su Wenyu saw her father-in-law like this, she knew that she was angry, but there was nothing she could do about it. Some things could be tolerated, and some things could not be endured. Otherwise, Yang would only take advantage of her. She thought Han Yu should be able to understand her. After having such an unpleasant quarrel with the Yang family today, Su Wenyu did not immediately fetch Feng Susu and her son. There were some things that she did not need to report to her parents-in-law, but had to get Han Yu's consent. And with Han Yu's doting and loving attitude towards her, trust, she should agree. The reason why she made good friends with Feng Susu and her son and took them over was for Han Yu's good. Su Wenyu had been so sure before, but with the incident of Yang today, she was not so sure. After all, Yang was Han Yu's biological mother, and the father-in-law's attitude was not so clear, and he even stood on the side of the mother-in-law. Han Yu's attitude would definitely be affected by them. It was obviously a good thing. It was not easy to gather Feng Susu and her son, but branches and branches grew again, adding obstacles. Su Wenyu felt a little irritated. Su Wenyu thought about it and sent a little girl to wait at the door. Although she was very confident in Han Yu, the other party was Han Yu's biological parents. In order to prevent Yang from complaining first and letting Han Yu have a preconceived idea, Su Wenyu thought about telling Han Yu the cause of the incident first and let Han Yu make his own judgment. Anyway, she felt that she had done nothing wrong. How is it, is the master back? Su Wenyu saw that the girl she sent to wait had returned, but she did not see Han Yu following her, and was not sure whether Han Yu had returned. Madam, the master went to the old lady first and said he would come over soon. Did the old lady go to find the master? Su Wenyu asked again. The maid shook her head and said the master went there by himself. I didn't see the old lady. Su Wenyu felt a little cold in her heart when she heard this. What did Han Yu mean by this? He knew that she sent a maid to wait, but he went there first. Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, TNNI. Chapter 202. Su Wenyu prides herself on trusting Han Yu, but sometimes, some things are not as simple as trust. Too many other things are mixed in, and the thoughts will become complicated. To a certain extent, it is not that Su Wenyu does not believe in Han Yu, but that he trusts Han Yu. He was not confident that he could compare with his parents who gave birth to and raised him in Han Yu's heart. Xiao 11 was a little worried when she saw her wife's ugly face. She stayed with her and knew the whole story clearly. On one side was the father and mother, on the other was the daughter-in-law. Both were very important. She didn't know which side the adults were on in the end. However, no matter what she was thinking in her heart, Xiao 11 always wanted to persuade Su Wenyu not to let the wife's bad mood affect the child in her belly. I believe adults will also take this into consideration. Madam, don't think too much. Your Excellency is very kind to you on weekdays. you will definitely not believe the old lady's one-sided words. What's more, you are still pregnant with a child. How can I be on your side? It's not that I think too much, it's just that they are his parents after all. Even if Han Yu is on my side, I'm afraid he will have thoughts in his heart and feel that I don't respect my mother-in-law enough. Maybe Han Yu is the same as my father-in-law and mother-in-law. I don't think I should take in Aunt Feng and her son. I naturally have my own reasons for doing things, but there are some things that I can't say out loud now. You see, doesn't it explain some problems that he wants to go to my mother-in-law? To put it bluntly, Su Wenyu was resentful that Han Yu did not come over immediately, but went to the Yang family. After all, Su Wenyu would not do this on normal days, so it was a rare occasion that she asked the maid to go over and wait for someone, but Han Yu had not come over yet. Han Yu didn't know that his actions would cause his wife to have so many thoughts. When he saw his wife sending her maid over, he knew something must have happened at home. After asking if his wife was okay, the maid hesitated again, so he guessed there must be a conflict between the wife and his mother. His mother's temperament, before he went out in the morning, he had a heart-to-heart talk, just because he was afraid that his mother would embarrass his wife, and she obviously promised well. Even if she felt uncomfortable, she shouldn't have made a fuss. It was probably in the middle something happened again. Although Han Yu didn't know what the fuss was about, he had a rough guess, so he decided to go to his mother's place first to have a look and try to deal with his mother's problems. Naturally, his heart was on his wife's side. As Han Yu expected, Ms. Yang really cried and complained to Han Yu. It was nothing more than Su Wenyu's various bad things and the matter of Feng Susu's mother and son moving in. She firmly disagreed, even if Su said it was her dowry. But this home still belongs to her son. I know that your daughter-in-law is from a rich family and is more delicate than ordinary daughters-in-law. Even if she is dissatisfied, she can tolerate it, but she doesn't take me as her mother-in-law seriously. She is so contradictory. Me, you don't take me seriously at all. Your wife dislikes me for being nosy, but I'm not doing it for your own good, and I don't want a penny from you. Some of the things I said were not wrong, but your wife did too much. After all, how can you just invite outsiders into your home casually? Who knows if that mother and son are good people? You have to tell your wife, I will definitely not agree to this. Fourth brother, originally I didn't want to get involved in the affairs between you and your wife, but this time your wife has indeed gone too far. You should give her some advice and don't let yourself go. In the end, you, the man, are responsible for the big things in the family. Make the decision. After Yang finished speaking, old man Han also said a few words. Seeing that his father had said this, Han Yu knew that his wife's attitude would definitely be tough this time. As for Feng Susu's mother and son, although her daughter-in-law didn't tell him in advance, she had treated the mother and son very differently before, and there must be something wrong with them. Any special reason? It was half an hour after Han Yu came out from Yang's house. When he returned to the room, he opened the door and found that the room was dark. If Xiao 11 and Aunt Chen hadn't been guarding the door, Han Yu would have thought that Su Wenyu was not in the room. Inside. This movement showed that the matter was more serious than he thought. His wife rarely had such moments, and at most she would make trouble with him and lose her temper. Today, she was probably very angry. Han Yu didn't think his mother had the ability to fight him. Wife, I'm afraid that what his mother said was unpleasant, which made her angry. Why don't you light up the lamp when it's so dark in the room? Madam is still pregnant with a child. She should be careful about everything. How could she be left alone in the room? How did you serve her? Han Yu glanced at Nanny Chen at the door with dissatisfaction. From one glance, they were obviously dissatisfied with their actions. Even if the daughter-in-law was angry, these servants should persuade her instead of letting their master be in danger. Normally, if Han Yu had scolded his servants like this, Suwenyu would have spoken up to defend him, but today there was no movement at all. Hanyu felt a little nervous and quickly walked to the bed in a few steps. The servants also lit the lamp at this time. He saw a bulge on the bed and lifted the quilt, revealing Suwenyu's back. Hanyu carefully turned the person over, only to find that Jiaranir's face was full of tears, her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and his heart twitched. "Daughter-in-law, what's wrong with you? Why are you crying like this? Have you been wronged in any way?" Hanyu really didn't expect that his wife would be so emotional. If he had known earlier, he would have come back instead of trying to calm him down. The conflict between mother and daughter-in-law wants to go over there. "You don't care what I do. You are a family anyway, why don't you care what I, an outsider, do?" Suwenyu wanted to push Hanyu away, but he held him firmly in his arms and pushed her a few more times, but couldn't. When he moved, he turned his face to one side, tears streaming down his face, as if he didn't want any money. Suwenyu felt a little uncomfortable in her heart, but more importantly, she wanted to let Hanyu know that she had been wronged and suffered a lot since Yang had taken the lead and complained first. She didn't have a strategy to deal with it. This trick will definitely work against Hanyu. "Daughter-in-law, be obedient and tell me if you have any grievances. Stop crying, otherwise the child in your belly will be sad with you." Seeing his wife like this, Hanyu felt distressed and had a headache, and he hurriedly coaxed her. "You only care about the child in your belly and don't care about my thoughts at all. You left me alone at home and let your mother bully me. You didn't even hear what your mother said about me. It's okay to be picky about me. She said that I was a prodigal woman. You were the one who brought those servants, but she blamed me. Wow, she was not as unjust as me. She also said that I was squeamish and that I came from a rich family. Miss, what's wrong with me is that I'm so squeamish. If you really dislike me so much, just divorce me. Anyway." Before Suwenyu finished speaking, Hanyu's face darkened. "What the hell? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, Tianni. Chapter 203. At this time, Suwenyu also realized that she had said the wrong thing. What Hanyu was most taboo about was her saying that she wanted to leave. In the past, every time she touched on this topic, she would be punished miserably. Although she is pregnant now, Suwenyu believes, as long as Hanyu thought about it, she would be repaired miserably, not to mention the idea of settling accounts after the fall. "Anyway, I won't leave anyway. I like you, my husband, the most." Suwenyu, a spineless guy, changed his words abruptly under Hanyu's unpredictable gaze, and even cried. Hiccup, Hanyu didn't feel distress this time, and his face still looked good. "Are you sincere? Why don't you sound sincere to me at all? If you really like someone so much, you will cry and make trouble at every turn to divorce yourself. Sure enough, if you don't seek death, you won't die." Suwenyu saw that Hanyu was unwilling to give up. She was clearly the one who caused trouble for Hanyu before, but why did her style of painting suddenly change, and she became the one who was groveling? "Ms. Sir, what I said was angry. Who told your mother to say that to me? I was so angry that I couldn't speak without hesitation. It's not like you don't know that pregnant women can easily lose control of their emotions. If you accidentally say something wrong, the words are excusable." Hanyu held Hanyu's arm with a somewhat flattering and careful look on his face. "This is a good excuse," Hanyu said with a smile, still with the same expression that made Suwenyu's scalp tingle. Suwenyu was also a little annoyed. She was originally in a bad mood today. "Then what are you going to do? Didn't I just accidentally say the wrong thing? Why are you holding on to it so much? If you really don't want to go through with it, don't go through with it. It will also save you all the trouble of coming to me. My fault is that I am a young lady who doesn't know how to be delicate and can't meet your high requirements. Su Wenyu said it in one breath and felt much relieved. Han Yu didn't have a bad face this time. Although he was still very uncomfortable with his wife's tendency to mention leaving. After all, the situation was different. She would be really annoyed to say such a thing, and she would teach her a lesson in the future. Opportunity, the top priority now is just to coax him and don't cause any trouble for him. After all, not only the wife's body can't stand it, but the child in her belly can't stand it either. Daughter-in-law, please don't say such things again in the future. You are already the mother of 2 children, so I don't need to say any more. Su Wenyu was not unreasonable at first, but she became a little cautious after getting angry. Now Han Yu was willing to give in, so she went down the steps, thinking that pregnancy would indeed be more privileged, otherwise Han Yu would not be so easy to coax. Looking at her, he probably took her away and taught her a lesson. After Su Wenyu calmed down, Han Yu asked about Feng Susu and her son again. I heard from my parents that you want to take Feng Susu and her son into your home. Su Wenyu heard Han Yu ask and looked up at Han Yu's expression, but didn't see anything. She didn't know what Han Yu was thinking. Did he agree or disagree? Yes, I think Aunt Feng and her son are very pitiful, so I want to help them. You don't agree, right? Su Wenyu said, looking at Han Yu without blinking, waiting for Han Yu's answer. You really pity their mother and son, so you want to help them. Han Yu was very suspicious of his wife's motives. This little thing still wants to deal with him. She is not that kind-hearted person. There are many people in this world who deserve sympathy, so what a pitiful person who didn't see that she wanted to help. What was the difference between Feng Susu and her son? They deserved her help again and again. They even brought people into the house. Although he hadn't found anything wrong yet, he still wanted to help her. His wife asked him to help find Feng Susu's husband, right? I have to say that Han Yu came up with the idea right away. Su Wenyu, however, had no intention of explaining Han Yu's doubts, and made up her mind to give Han Yu a surprise when the time came. Otherwise, what is there in them that I can take advantage of? I just see Aunt Feng and her son as pitiful, and I know how to repay my kindness, so I thought of helping them, which can also be regarded as a blessing for the child in my belly. Your wife, don't you know he's so kind-hearted? Su Wenyu said shamelessly. Yes, my wife is a good woman with a kind heart, Han Yu said with a smile, but not a smile, with a certain kind of teasing in his eyes. Su Wenyu didn't seem to notice, so, will you agree to my bringing Aunt Feng and her son home? Don't worry, Aunt Feng and her son are not just freeloaders. They are not people who accept food that comes from outside. I asked them to help me with things. Aunt Feng's pickling skills are really amazing. Even the imperial chefs in the palace cannot compare to her skills. I asked her to hand over this skill to the people around me, and there is no loss in buying like this, Su Wenyu said when she saw that Han Yu seemed hesitant. I didn't say not to let them live in. My wife wants to do good deeds. How can I disagree? Regardless of Han Yu's belief that Su Wenyu had a purpose, Han Yu would not refuse even if he was really just helping others. Who can make his wife happy? Feng Susu and her son don't spend much money, so he can afford it. Then you're not afraid that your parents will be unhappy? I think they both disagree with letting Aunt Feng and her son live here. Su Wenyu looked at Han Yu suspiciously. Don't worry about me, parents. I will tell you. If my parents ask about Feng Susu's mother and son, don't argue with them. Just blame it on me. After all, it's his own parents. Han, although you favored his wife and took her wishes as his will, he could not completely ignore the feelings of his parents. At least he could find a good reason to cover up the matter. I know Su Wenyu knew that it was not easy for Han Yu to do this. After all, they were his biological parents. She did not want to make too much trouble and was willing to make some concessions. Old man Han and Yang Shi originally firmly disagreed. When they heard Han Yu say that the matter of Feng Susu and her son was his idea, they were skeptical. They didn't know if their son said this for his daughter-in-law, but it didn't seem like it. The son came to them as soon as he came back, and he didn't talk to his daughter-in-law. It was impossible for them to collude in advance. Is there really a reason to take in Feng Susu and her son? The fourth daughter-in-law didn't look like someone who was confused. It was impossible for her to just let someone live in her home. Maybe it was really the fourth son's idea. Old man Han had a good impression of Su Wenyu and believed it at first. Yang Shi didn't believe it very much. She thought there was something fishy and wanted to understand it in detail, but soon she didn't have the leisure time. The order of the court to reform the currency system had been issued, and there would definitely be turmoil next. Old man Han and Yang Shi were both on the sidelines about this matter, and they didn't know whether such news was good or bad. Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, Tianni. Chapter 204. Dad, what do you think about this? The court said it is going to reform the currency, but I don't know what kind of reform it will be, Yang said worriedly. At this time, he could no longer worry about his son's family affairs. Old man Han took a puff of his cigarette. He was also worried. He didn't know how the court was going to change the law, and he didn't know whether it would be detrimental to his own interests after the change. In this case, I'll go out and investigate to see what's going on. Old man Han thought for a while and simply stood up and walked outside. Yang quickly followed, not forgetting to take a bunch of money and put it in his arms. Old man, let me go with you. It's not safe to stay at home. It's better to go together and see what's going on. When we arrived at the market, the usually bustling street market was now full of gloom and gloom. Many people were crying and crying. It was supposed to be a bumper harvest this year. They earned a lot of money from selling millet. They could live a prosperous new year. How could they have imagined it? Things in the world are unpredictable. In the blink of an eye, the money exchanged for food suddenly turned into a pile of scrap metal. A year of hard work was in vain. The important thing is, what does the family need to live on? Old man Han and Mrs. Yang came back from a trip. The expressions on their faces were extremely solemn. Obviously, this currency reform had a great impact on them. The money collected at home has depreciated, but fortunately, the food at home only sells a small part was lost, and it was all thanks to the fourth daughter-in-law. Old man Han and Mrs. Yang were both a little happy when they thought about it. Because of this, Mrs. Yang's knot with Su Wenyu had been relieved a lot. No matter what, the fourth daughter-in-law's shortcomings no longer mattered. Although there are many, it is a lucky one and can bring good luck to their family. Su Wenyu had experienced the past life and had long known about the need to reform the currency. Although she could not tell the Han family directly, she reminded them in a roundabout way and asked them to collect the food. The world is too chaotic these days and nothing can compare. Food is important, and they were afraid that the Han family would not listen. They also said that the food here should be bought from the Han family. Old man Han and the others did not sell the food, otherwise they would end up like those people in the market. Su Wenyu didn't like the Han family very much, but they were both members of the Han family, and their interests were connected. If the Han family really suffered, they would not be able to come to Han Yu at that time, and they would not be able to ignore it. When Han Yu came back in the evening, Old man Han and Mrs. Yang called Han Yu and Su Wenyu over. Old man Han praised Su Wenyu at the beginning, "Fourth daughter-in-law, it's all thanks to you this time. If it weren't for you, there would be no food at home. If they were stored in the warehouse and sold long ago, our family would suffer a huge loss." Han Yu didn't know about this, so he raised his eyebrows when he heard this. He didn't expect that his daughter-in-law had done a lot of things for the family when he didn't know about it. This was probably another warning from the daughter-in-law's dream, so she acted like this. Otherwise, their family could buy food in the town, which would save the cost on the road and make it cheaper. Moreover, the money and goods are settled and there is nothing else involved, so there is no need to buy it at home. Yes, my fourth daughter-in-law, it's all thanks to you this time. I'm really lucky. At this time, Yang was still thinking about the people in the market shouting at each other, and her heart was filled with happiness and joy. Then he said two words from his heart. Su Wenyu was speechless when she saw Yang like this. What should she say to her mother-in-law? A few days ago, she was regarded as an enemy, and now she is regarded as a benefactor. This attitude has changed too quickly and is too uncertain. She couldn't hold a grudge even if she wanted to, and sighed in her heart. After all, she was Han Yu's biological mother. Father, mother, we are a family, and we have grown apart just by talking about this. I didn't expect that the court would reform the currency at the time. It was just a coincidence, but the result is always good. That's why I say you are blessed. Others are pregnant with one child, but you are pregnant with two. At first, you were not willing to keep the food for the third child and his family, but now you should know the benefits, Yang said. There is still some pride in. When Han Yu saw his mother like this, he was also speechless. However, it was better for his mother and daughter-in-law to have a good relationship than to hate each other, otherwise it would be difficult for him to be caught in the middle. Fourth daughter-in-law, there is one more thing. I have asked you to come over. Your mother and I have decided to go back to the village early tomorrow morning. Such a big change has happened. I don't know how the family is doing. The third daughter-in-law is about to give birth. We have to go back to feel at ease. Old man Han told his son and daughter-in-law about his decision. You want to go back in such a hurry? Otherwise, you should stay a few more days and wait for me to take a rest and take you back in person. No, you are busy with things in the military camp. Your father and I will just go back by ourselves. If you don't need to send anything, you just have to do your own thing with peace of mind. Your father and I will leave early tomorrow morning. Anyway, we are here. I won't be able to help you, but it will make everyone unhappy. It would be better to go back earlier. Yang's words changed a bit, and she was reluctant to let go of her son, feeling a little disappointed. Su Wenyu heard her father-in-law and mother-in-law say that she wanted to go back, and she breathed a sigh of relief in her heart, but she didn't dare to show it on her face. When her mother-in-law said this, she quickly said, "Mom, don't say that, you have been busy these days. The outsiders still helped me a lot, although some things were unpleasant. We are all a family. It is normal to have a little stumbling. There are fights between teeth and tongues. If your daughter-in-law does anything wrong, you should do the same. Don't take it to heart. Why don't you stay a few more days? Things at home won't be urgent at this time." Seeing Su Wenyu opening her mouth to stay, Yang's pent-up breath disappeared. On the contrary, she became even more anxious to go back. No, your eldest sister-in-law and third sister-in-law are not easy to worry about. If such a big thing happens, I'm afraid of them. If your son is making trouble at home, you have to go back and take care of him before you feel relieved. As a result, Old Man Han and Yang decided to go back early tomorrow morning. Su Wenyu would not let her parents-in-law drive the ox cart back, which was slow and troublesome. Besides, there was a horse carriage at home, so she could not let her parents-in-law suffer that. She also arranged a guard to take them back together. Thinking that it was the first time for her parents-in-law to come back, Su Wenyu naturally could not let them go back empty-handed. She worked in the kitchen with the servants for an afternoon, making a lot of cakes and delicious food. She also took out a few pieces of ingredients from the boxes and cages, and packed up half a carriage of food and daily necessities. The sweet potatoes in the field were also ripe, and a lot of them were sent over from the farm. It was also the good luck of Old Man Han and Yang that they happened to meet. Su Wenyu packed a few sacks for Old Man Han and Yang to take back. "Fourth brother's wife, what are these? They look like lumps of earth, very rare at that time. Sweet potatoes were only available in the outer vassal states and had not yet spread widely. When old man Han and Yang saw Su Wenyu packing several sacks of lumps of earth for them, they studied them for a long time but could not figure out what they were, so they could not help but ask curiously. Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, TNNI. Chapter 205. These sweet potatoes were brought from the outer domain. No wonder my parents didn't recognize them. I asked my parents to get the seeds from the outer domain and planted some on the farm. This is the first harvest. I asked my parents to take them back and taste them. Fresh Su Wenyu said with a smile, and told old man Han and Yang several ways to eat sweet potatoes. In fact, most of the crops planted in Su Wenyu's farm are sweet potatoes, and the rest include other crops from other vassals. Because the farm is all old-fashioned, and Su Wenyu is willing to spend money, the crops in the farm grow exceptionally well, and sweet potatoes are worthy of being the sacred object presented to Emperor Wu by concubine Li in her previous life. The yield of the crops is astonishingly high, and they don't care about the land. Zhuangzi Su Wenyu ordered people to dig many cellars early, and they were filled with sweet potatoes, which was impossible to eat all. But Su Wenyu will not tell old man Han and Yang. Old man Han and Mr. Yang heard that it was something obtained by a foreign vassal. It was really a rare thing. No wonder they had never seen it before. It looked strange and ugly, but from what the fourth daughter-in-law said, it seemed to be delicious. I don't know what it smells like. Fourth daughter-in-law, since this thing came from a foreign vassal, it must be very expensive. You also packed these sacks for us. You don't need to take so many. Your mother and I will take a few back to have a taste, and the rest will be better. You can keep it for yourselves. Old man Han didn't know that this was a valuable item from a foreign domain. His daughter-in-law didn't say a word when loading the car. Now that he knows, he doesn't want to ask for so much because he doesn't want his daughter-in-law to spend so much. When Ms. Yang heard that this earth lump had such an origin, she also had the same idea as her old man. They could just take such a precious thing back to taste it fresh, and the rest should be left for the fourth and his wife to eat by themselves. Don't let them ruin a good thing. Mom, Dad, my husband, and I are paying special tribute to you. There are still some in Zhuangzi. If we don't have enough, we can just ask Zhuangzi to send them over after the family separation. Su Wenyu did not hide anything about Zhuangzi. However, old man Han and Ms. Yang both thought it was just a small village, so they were not too surprised or concerned. Considering how much the mother-in-law dotes on her daughter, it is normal to give her daughter-in-law a village as a dowry. Okay, since that's the case, we will take it back and let everyone have a taste of this new thing from the foreign domain and learn more about it. When old man Han and Ms. Yang heard what Su Wenyu said, they stopped insisting. Who doesn't want good things? Since they still have their daughter-in-law, they will take them back. Ms. Yang still has some thoughts on showing off in front of everyone. It would be nice for them to come again. It is easy to come to Silla town to visit the son who is an official. It would be decent to bring some novelty things to everyone when he goes back. When the time comes, someone familiar with him will give a few sweet potatoes so that everyone can try the novelties of the outer domain. What a feeling! Su Wenyu hadn't eaten the newly delivered sweet potatoes for a long time, and she also missed the taste. She specially taught the sweet potatoes in the kitchen how to make sweet potatoes. Not only old man Han and Yang, but also Han Yu praised the deliciousness. This stuff is sweet and delicious. The noodles taste extra sweet and can be made into so many delicious dishes. Fourth daughter-in-law, these sweet potatoes are really delicious. They look like lumps, but when they are steamed, they turn golden yellow. They are beautiful and delicious. It is because of you that we, the old couple, can eat such precious potatoes. Since this thing is from a foreign vassal, I'm afraid even the emperor in the Golden Palace has never eaten it. Yang felt a little proud as he thought about it. Su Wenyu felt something was wrong when she heard Yang's words. Even the emperor had not eaten the food they had eaten. If someone with a heart heard it and used it as a basis, it would be a serious crime. However, with Han Yu present, she did this. The daughter-in-law stopped being such a bad person and just pretended not to hear. Han Yu frowned. "Mom, you can't say this nonsense. Your Majesty is something that we can mention at will. If someone hears your words, our whole family will be beheaded. Disaster will follow mouth out." What, for saying such a thing, he would be beheaded? Yang was a little stunned and a little scared. The smile on his face disappeared and he looked frightened. Things in this officialdom are really complicated. It is a grave sin to fail to say a word well. Han Hu deliberately made the matter serious, hoping that Yang would know how serious it was, and that he was not trying to scare his mother. If someone really heard about it, it would be a big trouble, and it also reminded his mother to be more careful with what she said in the future. "Mom, I'm not trying to scare you. Things will be different when your son becomes an official. There are so many people watching behind my back, just waiting to find fault with me. If I'm not careful, it will cause trouble. I can save it, don't worry, my mother won't say anything nonsense in the future." If Su Wenyu said this, Yang would still think about whether her daughter-in-law was using this to scare her. Her own son said it, Yang didn't doubt it at all and kept nodding in response, fearing that she might accidentally cause trouble for the whole family. Su Wenyu saw that Mrs. Yang was very frightened by Han Yu. She, as a good daughter-in-law, should naturally comfort her. "Mom, that's what my husband said. Don't be afraid. We are all our own people here. It doesn't matter what you say, it won't spread, just be careful in the future." What Yu Enyang said is that mother-in-law listens to you at this time. Mrs. Yang felt more and more that her daughter-in-law was doing well. She brought so many things back to them without saying anything, and even helped her out in front of her son. Su Wenyu praised her and asked Han Yu to take good care of Su Wenyu. It was so good that she couldn't bear to go back. Su Wenyu is also a bit of a soft-spoken person. When her mother-in-law was picky about her, she really hated this old woman who couldn't understand things. Now that her mother-in-law treats her well, she feels that she used to contradict her mother-in-law and use her little tricks. "I felt a little sorry for the method, but instead became affectionate to my mother-in-law." Knowing that her father-in-law and mother-in-law wanted to give sweet potatoes as gifts, Su Wenyu asked the kitchen to fry a few pots of sweet potato balls. They were made with glutinous rice flour and had sweet fillings inside. They were crispy when bitten, but soft and sticky inside, especially sweet and delicious. They were packed in 2 clean baskets, and Yang was given a stack of paper bags. She packed them in paper bags when giving them away, which was convenient, decent, and beautiful. Yang felt that this daughter-in-law couldn't be more considerate. Fourth daughter-in-law, these sweet potato balls are really delicious, fragrant, crispy, sweet, and sticky. Even the ones in the county snack shop are not as good as this. Yang couldn't help but pinch another sweet potato ball and put it in her mouth, eating it with joy. As long as mother likes it, it's good. However, this food is very hot right out of the pot. Eating too much will easily cause internal heat. Mother should let it cool down before eating. I know, it's just that it's so delicious that I can't help it," Yang said with a smile, helping the maids and the old women to pack the sweet potato balls and put them on the carriage. "Dad, Mother, be careful on your way. Come over often when you have time. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, Tianni. Chapter 206. After sending her father-in-law and mother-in-law away, Su Wenyu felt much more relaxed. Thinking that the town had been in turmoil due to the currency reform in the past few days, Feng Susu and her son could not be delayed any longer, Su Wenyu immediately asked Zioxi to take 2 guards to pick up Feng Susu and her son. When Feng Susu and her son came, they did not look very good, and their clothes were a little messy. It turned out that due to the currency reform, there were more homeless people. Even the dilapidated temple where Feng Susu and her son lived was a good place to settle down. Many homeless people came to the dilapidated temple to settle down, which involved a matter of occupying territory. Feng Susu and her son looked relatively weak, so they would naturally be targeted. However, Feng Susu and her son were not the kind of weak people who were easily bullied, so they ended up confronting those who were trying to occupy territory. When Zioxi and the others went over, Feng Susu fell to the ground in embarrassment, and Antai was determined to fight with a middle-aged man. Fortunately, they arrived in time, otherwise Antai would not only have a bruise on his face. "That's really, Antai, are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere? How about I ask a doctor to come and see you?" Su Wenyu asked with concern. Her eyes fell on Feng Susu and her son, who seemed to be fine. "Don't worry, Yu Niang, there's no need to ask a doctor. We just had some skin injuries, it's not a big deal." Feng Susu waved her hand when she heard that Su Wenyu wanted to ask a doctor, fearing that she would cause more trouble for Su Wenyu. Su Wenyu saw Feng Susu like this, and didn't want to add to her psychological burden, so she didn't insist. "Okay, Zioxi, take Shen and Antai to their room first, and let Auntie and Antai clean up first." Since then, Feng Susu and her son have lived in the Han family. Feng Susu is a person who keeps her word. Since she promised Su Wenyu to teach her the skill of pickling vegetables, she really put in the effort to teach. Shuken is a person who is obsessed with cooking. She gets closer to Feng Susu every day. Su Wenyu herself is more knowledgeable about food than Shuken, and she occasionally gives a few pointers, which helps Shuken a lot. "Madam, this year's harvest is still good. The vegetables and fruits we planted in the backfield are growing well. We can't eat them all by ourselves, and it's a pity to leave them alone. I came to ask your opinion. Do you want to sell some?" Nanny Chen helped Su Wenyu manage the kitchen and the vegetable field in the back, and suggested to Su Wenyu that the backfield was not only planted with common vegetables here, but also some seedlings transplanted from the farm, which were new varieties introduced from foreign vassal states. If they were sold, they could be sold at a good price. "No need. Some of them will be dried, and those that can't be dried will all be pickled. With so many people here, there's no need to worry about lack of work." Su Wenyu asked Feng Susu to live in the Han family. She really wanted to rely on Feng Susu's craftsmanship. Although Shuken's craftsmanship was good, the pickled vegetables always lacked the taste. Even if she was good at cooking in her previous life, she couldn't figure out what was wrong. With Feng Susu's help, the pickled vegetables must taste very good. Not only can they be eaten at home, but they can also be given as gifts. Don't say whether a few jars of pickled vegetables are presentable or not. That also depends on how to give them away. As long as the craftsmanship is good and the packaging is beautiful, it will be popular. In her previous life, before concubine Li entered the palace, she opened many shops. One of the pickled vegetable shops was very famous in the upper circle, and a jar of pickled vegetables was sold at a sky-high price. Knowing the things in her previous life, Su Wenyu naturally knew that it was not worthwhile to sell the vegetables and exchange them for a bunch of devalued currencies. There had been more than one currency reform, and money was becoming less and less valuable. It would be better to make the excess vegetables into pickles or dried vegetables. Not to mention that the packaging looked very high-end and elegant. It was definitely presentable. For a long time in the future, food was the most precious thing. In general places, these gifts were more popular than gold and silver utensils. Nanny Chen didn't know Su Wenyu's thoughts and didn't understand them. After all, no one could have imagined how difficult the future would be if they hadn't experienced it. It was good enough for ordinary people to have enough to eat. "Madam, I'm afraid you can't finish all the pickles you make. Nanny Chen just thought that Madam was just on a whim and liked to eat, so she made so many. If you can't finish it, you can give it away. Don't worry, Nanny, I have my own reasons for doing things. Just do what I say, Su Wenyu said, and then she remembered that there were not so many jars at home to pickle pickles, so she asked Zioxi to go to the town to ask someone to bake a batch, and the pattern was drawn by Su Wenyu herself. It doesn't matter if the price is a little higher, you have to ask them to make the jar beautiful for me, just follow this design, Su Wenyu said, fearing that Zioxi would ignore the quality of the jar in order to save money for her, and she also made a few detailed requirements, making sure that the jar was made beautiful, exquisite, and generous. I understand, madam, don't worry, I will definitely do the job well. It was not the first time that Zioxi did things for Su Wenyu, and she was very experienced. Su Wenyu was relieved to let Zioxi do it. However, Zioxi went there with the silver, but the matter was not completely done. The kill factory owner said that he could make the jar according to their requirements, but he would not accept silver as the deposit, but only grain. After the currency reform, the currency became less and less valuable, and the real grain was more real, and it was safe to keep it, and it would not depreciate suddenly. Nowadays, grain is precious in every household. If Zioxi had made the decision on her own in the past, she came back today to ask Su Wenyu's opinion, and then sent some grain as a deposit. After this batch of jars are made, she will hand over the goods and grain at the same time. Su Wenyu had no worries about food. She knew what would happen in the future, so she prepared early on. She stored food in several granaries and spent all the money she had. In addition, the farm also harvested a large number of crops, so there was no need to buy them from outside. The Su family also stored a considerable amount of food. Because they had plenty of money, they spent much more than Su Wenyu. The same goes for the fruits and vegetables in the farm. Those that can be kept are put in the cellar. Those that cannot be kept for a long time can be made into dried vegetables or pickles, and they don't need to be sold outside, Su Wenyu ordered. Considering the convenience issue, the things here are similar, so Shuken and Zioxi were specially sent to the farm to take charge of these things. It was enough to have Feng Susu at home. Su Wenyu didn't intend to let Feng Susu know too much about the things in the farm. Han Yu has been busy these days because of the chaos caused by the currency reform. The military force in the Yamen is not enough, and the military camp has to send troops to maintain public order. However, no matter how busy he has not neglected his pregnant wife at home, knowing that his wife has been making a lot of noise these days. Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, Tianni. Chapter 207. Han Yu didn't restrict what his wife could do. He was worried that her daughter-in-law would be tired, not to mention that she was still pregnant with a child. How could he worry so much? However, seeing that his wife was in good spirits and eating and drinking well, he was a little relieved. Some. Ms. Sir, this is freshly made in the kitchen. Do you want to try it and see if it tastes good? Su Wenyu placed a plate of golden pumpkin cakes in front of Han Yu. Han Yu was too busy these days and rarely had time to spend time with her at home. Su Wenyu pulling Han Yu was a little tiring. It's not bad, it's quite fragrant, but this stuff is very irritating, so you should eat less of it. Han Yu took a piece of pumpkin cake and tasted it. In the time it took him to eat, Su Wenyu had already destroyed 2 or 3 pieces of pumpkin cake. Han Yu motioned to the maid to take away the pumpkin cake. Su Wenyu watched the fragrant pumpkin cake being taken away, and pouted dissatisfied. She also knew that eating too much food that can easily cause irritation is not good, so she did not stop her. However, her stomach was still empty, so she asked the maid to eat something if she wanted to. I brought other pastries. Han Yu had been watching from the side, watching his wife destroy a basket of xiaolongbao, and now she had finished a plate of mung bean cake, and was about to continue eating, so he quickly stopped. Previously, he heard from his mother-in-law that his wife could I haven't felt much about eating, but I have to eat more to replenish energy when I'm pregnant with a baby. Now that I see my wife's eating method, I feel that she really eats too much. If she eats this way, she may not be able to grow as big as her belly. Okay, you've eaten enough now. You can't eat any more. The doctor has told you to eat smaller meals more frequently. I'll accompany you for a walk first and digest what you just ate. A flash of worry flashed in Yu's eyes, thinking of what the doctor had said, that the fetus would be dangerous to his wife. It seemed that he would have to instruct his mother to strictly control her daughter-in-law's diet and not allow her to eat like this anymore. Yu leaned on the recliner and didn't want to move. As her belly grew bigger, it became more and more difficult to move. She was exhausted and sweaty after walking even a few steps, and her feet were sore and swollen. Sir, I've just eaten. I don't want to go. I'm so tired from walking. Yu held Han Yu's hand and acted coquettishly. She usually persisted no matter how hard she worked for her children, but she felt a lot more fragile when Han Yu was around. Want to take a break? Han Yu persisted. The doctor said that doing certain exercises every day would make childbirth smoother and reduce the risk. He hugged Yu semi-forcefully and said, "Daughter-in-law, be obedient. We have to do what the doctor told us and stick to it. Just wait until the baby is born." "But I'm really tired today." Yu leaned against Han Yu angrily. Even though Han Yu felt distressed, he still didn't agree for the sake of his wife. He dragged Yu around a yard for half a quarter of an hour before returning with him in his arms. "Madam, you've already eaten your lunch portion, you can't eat any more." Seeing that Yu was holding a plate of pastries and eating them deliciously, Xiao 11 took it off rudely and confiscated the pastries in front of Yu. Since that day, Han Yu saw Yu's food intake and asked several doctors specifically. After getting the same answer, he strictly controlled Yu's food intake and issued death orders to the people below. "Xiao 11, I'm still a little hungry. I haven't eaten enough. Please give me another piece." Yu didn't care about the majesty of the master at this time. She softly begged Xiao 11 for the pastries. Unfortunately, Xiao 11 didn't have any kindness at all. "Speak." "No, madam, you have to be obedient. The doctor has told you not to eat too much, otherwise the child in your belly will be too big to be born and it will be dangerous during delivery. Moreover, the adult has also ordered that besides the amount prescribed by the doctor, madam is not allowed to eat too much. Eat, if we dare to indulge madam, we will be sold out, so madam, please don't make things difficult for us." Xiao 11 saw the seriousness of the adults when they said these words, and did not dare to go against it in the slightest. This is also for the good of his master. Seeing his wife's belly getting bigger and bigger day by day, Xiao 11 is also worried. Han Yu is really annoying. He wants to take care of me when I eat. Yu couldn't eat enough these days, and her pregnancy became more and more strenuous. Some pregnancy symptoms appeared one after another, and she became more and more irritable. "I don't know why I can eat so well, but I can't control my desire to eat at all." Xiao 11 touched her nose and said nothing when she heard Yu's words. The lady could say these words, but they didn't dare to respond. The master was now more and more dignified, so they didn't dare to offend him at all. What Han Yu faced every day when he came back was his wife's angry look, which was a bit funny but also very distressing, but she had no choice but to continue. No matter what, the safety of his wife was more important, and the issue of principle could not be changed. Faced with all kinds of problems from his wife, offensive, he could only coax her in a good voice, but in his heart he thought that after this baby was born, even if he wanted another child, it would take a few years. He really couldn't bear to let his wife work so hard. "Xiao 11, madam, are you resting?" Grandma Chen asked outside the door, looking into the room with a somewhat hesitant expression. "No, madam is reading to the two little masters in her belly at this time." I heard that children born this way are smarter, but this slave is quite puzzled. The child in Madam's belly is still so young. Can he really understand Madam? What are you talking about? This is the first time Xiao 11 has heard of such a method, and she is a little skeptical. Well, both the master and the madam are very smart people, and the child in the belly must be smart too. Maybe he can really understand. Grandma Chen has never heard of such a practice, but the master always does it. It makes sense, maybe from some book. Nanny, what do you want to do with Madam? Xiao 11 looked at Nanny Chen's troubled face with curiosity. Grandma Chen sighed, hey, I don't want to bother Madam about this, but there are some things that we servants can't decide, and that Madam he is here to borrow food again. When Xiao 11 heard that her face was a little bad, the more chaotic the world was, the more weird people there were. Mrs. he was really shameless. She obviously had a normal relationship with their wife before and had very little contact with them. But now she came to her door when something happened. Come, I have come here twice in the past few days, both to borrow food. I have the nerve to come again, thinking they are running a charity here. Mommy, I told you not to let those unnecessary things disturb Madam. Otherwise, you should give Mrs. he back. Our Madam has helped her twice, and there is no reason to keep helping her like the Xiao 11 said angrily. That's what I thought, but Mrs. he is really difficult to deal with. She keeps asking to see our wife, and her words are very unpleasant. If she is not allowed to see our wife, I'm afraid she won't let it go. Grandma Chen dismissed her. I came to Su Wenyu because she was just a servant after all, and she couldn't do anything. She was also afraid that Mrs. he would say something that would ruin the reputation of their wife. Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, Tianni. Chapter 208. This person is so shameless. If she dares to ruin the reputation of our wife, I can't spare her. Xiao 11's voice became louder as soon as she got angry. Su Wenyu heard the conversation between Nanny Chen and Xiao 11 in the room. Nanny Chen, come in. When Xiao 11 heard Su Wenyu shouting, she knew that her voice was too loud and had disturbed her master. She felt a little resentful. Aunt Chen looked at Xiao 11 helplessly. Although this girl's impatience has changed a lot, she still gets anxious easily when meeting the wife. Getting angry and having some training. Why did Aunt Chen come here? Su Wenyu knew that Han Yu had given instructions. Normally, people would try their best to handle things so that she wouldn't have to worry about them. Now that Aunt Chen is here, there must be something difficult or something that cannot be solved. Matter. Back to Madam. Madam he is here again today, and she wants to borrow food from our house again. This time she has to borrow a lot of food. This slave can't make up her mind, so she has to come and ask Madam for advice. Mrs. he is here again. Su Wenyu is not too surprised. Mrs. he's virtue can be used for the first time, the second time, and naturally the third time. There is nothing that can't be done without shame. Yes, and Mrs. he keeps saying that she wants to see Mrs. he. She said that if she can't see her, she looks down on her. She also said. Granny Chen was afraid that Mrs. he would be angry after hearing this, but if she didn't say it, she wouldn't let Mrs. he know. If you do this, you will definitely get angrier when you see someone. What else are you talking about? Just say it, Mama, I know what kind of person Mrs. he is. I won't be angry with her. I am a little curious about what she can say that is not pleasant to the ears. Su Wenyu said now. The mentality is quite peaceful. Mrs. he said, Madam, you were just a deputy lieutenant's wife at the beginning, and she didn't look down on you. Although your excellency was promoted, you just got lucky and it's nothing special. Why do you look down on her? Madam, you ungrateful, treating her like an official's wife. Even though Su Wenyu was prepared, she still squirted out a mouthful of water. She felt that Mrs. he was too tough. She really wasn't afraid of offending people by saying such words. Moreover, the logic of her thinking was too strange. He didn't look down on her at first, but she doesn't look down on her now. You can't look down on he and say you are ungrateful. Where did this come from? The relationship between her and he was mediocre, not even close to friendship, let alone ungrateful. It was strange that she had never received any kindness from he. Madam, why don't you say goodbye? I sent he away. If she dares to talk nonsense outside, let's tell the adults and let them treat her. If it were anyone else, Grandma Chen would not dare to say this. Instead of Han Yu, Nanny Chen is convinced that her master's methods will definitely be able to deal with he. Su Wenyu originally planned to meet he and sent her away. After hearing what Granny Chen said, she thought it would be better to disappear just to be on the safe side. After all, he was too weird. Who knew what shocking words she would say after meeting her? Still missing, lest it accidentally irritate the child in the belly. However, Su Wenyu said it too late. He did not stay in the living room. Seeing that Su Wenyu had not come over, she came over regardless of the servant's obstruction. Han, you can't be like this. When you were just the wife of an 8th grade captain, I didn't look down on you, and I didn't look down on you when I saw you. Now that Mr. Han has been promoted, are you trying to show off to me? I just wanted to borrow some food, but you hid and refused to see me. Isn't that a bit ungrateful? You're not afraid of spreading the word and ruining your reputation. He walked away regardless of the obstruction. Come to Su Wenyu. Where did he start from saying this? I am just pregnant and unfit to meet guests. Why did I twist it like this when it came to he's mouth? Is he deliberately trying to ruin my reputation? I don't know what kind of friendship we had in the past. Two people who rarely even greeted each other came to my house and borrowed food twice. I borrowed it. Where did the ingratitude come from? It's because some people are greedy and have bad intentions. That's right. What's more, what if I really don't see you? I really treat myself like a green onion and don't even look in the mirror. If I give you a face, just go ahead and get out of here. Su Wenyu's words were harsh enough. You have to deal with someone like he directly. There is no need to save any face, otherwise she will definitely get angry. Su Wenyu didn't know he's background before, so she was polite. I really thought she was so easy to talk to. Hey, what's wrong with people in this world? They can't talk easily, so they have to do it in a bad way. Nanny Chen and Xiao 11 felt a little stupid when they heard Su Wenyu say this. They didn't expect their master to say bad words. After being stunned, they felt very refreshed, especially Nanny Chen had just been aggrieved by he, but she did this. It's impossible for a servant to be like this. She couldn't say it. She could just make a few sarcastic remarks. However, after Xiao 11 was surprised, she admired Su Wenyu completely. The master's words were too domineering. He also didn't expect that Su Wenyu's demeanor suddenly changed. She was a gentle person before, so she would take such a countermeasure. Who would have expected that she would suddenly become so tough? She looked at Su Wenyu dumbfounded, and she was sure that it was Su Wenyu himself. That's right. Han, why are you using such foul language? He seemed to be dissatisfied. Didn't she mean that she was born in a wealthy family and needed an upbringing? She heard that people from wealthy families cared about these things the most. Just now, the grandma was choked by her and had nothing to say, but she didn't say anything unpleasant. His words are funny. Why can't I say bad words? This is not your his patent. You are allowed to say it, but I can't, Su Wenyu said with a sarcastic look on her face. But. He was choked by Suwenaiyu and was speechless. She had obviously calculated well, but it was a pity that the situation changed so quickly that she didn't know how to deal with it. If he has nothing to say, please come back. My wife is carrying twins in her belly and they need to be taken care of. Our lords have ordered her to stay away from other people. He has already disturbed her by rushing in so hastily. My wife, if something happens to the child in my wife's belly, you can't bear it. Xiao 11's words were also very rude. He was willing to leave before her goal was achieved. When she saw Suwenaiyu and Xiao 11 chasing people away, she began to regain her fighting strength. Han, I have no choice. Your servants stopped me from seeing you, so I broke in. I just wanted to borrow some food from you. Han is rich and won't you are so stingy that you don't want to lend it to me. I don't want to borrow much. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, TNNI. Chapter 209. No matter how little is enough, everything should be done again and again. Our family is not a rich family. There are so many people in the family to support. I lent you the first time because your husband is a colleague of ours. Yes, I lent you the second loan because we all live in this area and are neighbors. Don't say anything about how our family can't live without food. The amount I lent you to before was enough for your family for a month or two. Okay, just a few days ago, came to borrow food again, but my place is used as the food warehouse of the county government. Suwenaiyu refused without thinking. If she had known he was so virtuous before, she would not have lent it out even those 2 times. She would never come back. Although she did not feel sorry for this small amount of food, she could give it to someone like It's better to feed it to pigs. If you fatten it up, you can still have a few extra kilograms of fat when slaughtered during the new year. His face froze. She had previously seen Suwenaiyu as easy to talk to, and Su's natal family was a well-known wealthy family, so they would not be short of this food. She thought that she could borrow it again, and it was useless to use it. When her mother-in-law came over to ask for food, my hands were a little looser. Those relatives in my husband's family were too difficult to deal with. It would definitely not work if I didn't give them. If they can't borrow food this time, their family will have to live in a hurry these days. Now that prices are soaring, food is the most important thing. It's not enough if they don't have enough to eat every day. He originally planned to use cunning methods if Su didn't agree. Su, who was as noisy as her husband's relatives, had nothing to do. Coming from a wealthy family like Su, the most important thing is a reputation. Then she would be afraid of Su. She didn't want to borrow food, but looking at Su's behavior just now, she was a little unsure. Han, I have no choice, otherwise I wouldn't come to you to borrow food. Although I have borrowed some before, my husband-in-law is the only one who supports such a big family. I could still make do with it before. There is really no other way in this world. I know you are kind-hearted, Han, so I ask you to help me this last time. Please lend me this time. Don't worry, I will return the food when the father-in-law's salary is paid. I won't ask for you in vain, he said confidently, but unfortunately there was no credibility in her words. I'm sorry, he. You and your family have to live, and so does our family. Speaking of which, our family supports many people. We can't live for your family. We shouldn't live our own lives, either. Please put yourself in my shoes, he, and don't be too selfish. Suwenaiyu made up her mind and was not polite to he at all. Even the words that he wanted to say were blocked by Suwenaiyu. He was a little frustrated. Hey, Mrs. Han, are you kidding me? Your family has such a big business, and they can have more food no matter how much they want. How can they be short of this little food? Even if they don't want to borrow it, there's no need to use this excuse to deal with it, I'll just say it. Mrs. He thought that saying this would stimulate Su Wenyu to change her attitude, but the effect had the opposite effect. Then let me tell Mrs. He directly that I don't want to lend you food, so you can leave. When Su Wenyu said this, she had already made a gesture of seeing off the guests. She was really unscrupulous and very arrogant. Ms. Su, hello, hello. Mrs. face was so gloomy that water dripped from her face. I'm very fine. Don't worry, Mrs. will forget about it. It makes Su Wenyu feel happy if she can make people who hate her feel happy. Naturally, she is very good. Humph, don't be proud for too long. I really thought your man would be great if he got promoted. The higher he climbs, the worse he falls. I'm waiting for that day. Mrs. was unwilling to give in. Before leaving, she did not forget to mock Su Wenyu. But he just felt that Han Yu's foundation in the military camp was unstable, and he had offended Master Tongxian, and he would be in trouble sooner or later, so he didn't take Su Wenyu seriously. As for what happened in the Su mansion that day, Su Wenyu didn't mention it, and Mrs. Tongpan and Mrs. Sun were even less likely to tell about the embarrassing experience. As for those rumors, everyone just ignored them and didn't take them completely seriously. I don't know if I can wait until that day, but I'm waiting for you, Mrs. to return the food to me as soon as possible, Su Wenyu said with a smile, and then made Mrs. angry, and left the Han family in anger. There was no reason to return the food she had received, she had no intention of returning it at all. Seeing Mrs. run away angrily, Xiao 11 clapped her hands and applauded, "Madam, you are so powerful. You can't be too polite when dealing with people like Mrs. Nanny Chen was a little worried. She didn't contradict Mrs. before. Firstly, it was an identity issue, and there were other concerns. Madam, Mrs. was so angry this time, she will definitely slander her when she goes back, madam, ruining madam's reputation. It doesn't matter, just let her talk." Su Wenyu waved her hand indifferently. She had considered all the issues that should be considered before doing it. In this situation, life will become more and more difficult. In the future, more and more people will come to her to borrow things to enjoy the autumn breeze. This opportunity lets everyone know that she, Su Wenyu, is not that easy to talk to, and those who want to come will be more worried. Feng Susu watched Mrs. leave angrily, and asked the servants in a low voice. She was a little worried when she learned the reason. Yu Yiniang seemed to be an official's wife, and her life was not that easy. She had to take care of the whole family. He also had to deal with people like Mrs. She couldn't help Yu Yiniang. All she could do was do her best to do the things she was doing. Not long after, the news that Madam He went to the Han family to borrow grain but was driven out by Su Wenyu spread everywhere. People who heard these rumors had different reactions. Some laughed at Madam He for being unpresentable, and some said Su Wenyu was stingy. However, it did have some effect. Most of those who hesitated to go to Su Wenyu for help gave up the idea. Most of these people were not very familiar with Su Wenyu, but they heard the wind and knew that Madam He had received grain twice at the Han family. They also wanted to take advantage of it. Just as they were about to go to the door, they heard the news that Madam He was driven out. "Master, this is the latest news about Monsieur." The man in black handed a piece of information to Sikong Ling. Since that day in Lingyan Temple, Sikong Ling has never seen Su Wenyu again. It's not that he didn't think about creating opportunities, but Su Wenyu was pregnant at home and had no chance at all. He could only rely on the information from his subordinates to learn about Su Wenyu's recent situation. Recently, this girl seems to be very active and noisy. Although he can't see her, he can hear a lot about her. Is the news over there accurate? Sikong Ling asked, stroking the information in his hand, with a complicated expression. It is accurate. I am afraid they will take action when they see the opportunity. Send a copy of the news and information to Han Yu. Sikong Ling said this with a hint of hesitation. Rebirth of a Farming Wife. Author, Tian Ni. Chapter 210. Master, why are you? The secret guard didn't understand. Since the master had thoughts about the woman, he shouldn't have revealed the news to Han Yu. Wouldn't it be better if Han Yu was in trouble and plotted against her? With the obstacle of Han Yu removed, the master just had a beautiful woman in his arms. However, due to the master's status, it was impossible for the woman to be the first wife. It shouldn't be a problem to take over and become a concubine or an auxiliary wife. Sikong Ling was still a little hesitant at first, but the secret guard asked him this, which made him solidify his mind. He did have some thoughts about Su Wenyu, but he didn't express any bad thoughts. Maybe he saw that she was living too happily and couldn't bear to break this beauty. And I don't know why deep down in my heart, I always feel guilty and pity for Su Wenyu, and I don't want to hurt her, nor do I want to see her hurt by others. Besides, such a proud and confident woman will not be willing to be a concubine, sharing a husband with another man. Just do as I say and give all the information to Han Yu. Now that Sikong Ling has made his decision, he will not regret it, but that's all he can do. With these things, if Han Yu he was also plotted against. Such a man is not worthy of Yu Enyang. Even if Yu Enyang is sad, Han Yu can only blame Han Yu for his incompetence. He will naturally take good care of Yu Enyang and will not let go. The secret guard didn't understand why Sikong Yu did this, but he should obey his master's orders. Nanny Chen, my husband said he would be back in 2 days. He should be back today. Please ask someone to greet you at the door. Come back and tell me immediately when your husband comes back. Su Wenyu looked at the sky getting darker and darker outside, and Han Yu still didn't come back, so he was a little worried and restless. These days, because her belly is getting bigger and bigger, Han Yu is worried. No matter how busy he is, he will come back to accompany her every day. Su Wenyu has become accustomed to Han Yu's company. This time, Han Yu has to go out to do something, and he has agreed to come back in 2 days. Yes, since she hadn't seen anyone yet, Su Wenyu couldn't help but think too much, for fear that Han Yu would encounter some danger outside. Don't worry, ma'am. This servant has already sent someone to greet you at the gate. As soon as the master comes back, he will come in and report the news. They waited until night. It was dark outside, but Han Yu still hadn't come back. Su Wenyu became even more worried, and even her interest in eating decreased a lot. Madam, it seems that you won't be back today. Why don't you rest first? Seeing that Su Wenyu was still struggling, Grandma Li persuaded her. Su Wenyu also knew that it was time to rest, otherwise it would be bad for the child in her belly, so she was a little worried. Mommy, you said my husband will be fine, why do I always feel so panicked? No, Your Excellency is so capable and has so many soldiers with you. Everything will be fine. It is normal for you to be a day or 2 late on errands. If Madam is worried, I will send a large number of people to the military camp to ask questions tomorrow morning. Just ask, don't mess up your mind by making random guesses. Su Wenyu knew that what Nanny Li said made sense, so she asked her servants to serve her and go to rest. She thought that she must send someone to ask questions tomorrow morning, otherwise she would not be at ease. Su Wenyu was worried, but Han Yu and his party returned to the camp in an extremely embarrassed state the next morning. No one was willing to take on this mission because it was too dangerous, so Han Yu and his party could come back so quickly. Came back in one piece, which was a bit surprising, and someone immediately spread the news. Hey, Deputy Lieutenant Han is back. He is really good. Those unscrupulous people are extremely arrogant and desperate. I thought that Deputy Lieutenant Han might be missing arms and legs this time. I didn't expect Deputy Lieutenant Han to be missing. Wei solved the matter so quickly, no wonder you take it seriously. Han Yu and the others had just returned to the camp when they heard a strange sound. When they looked closely, it was Li Bonian and several of his confidants who had gathered around them. He didn't know if they were just looking to laugh, or to confirm that Han Yu and the others were really nothing happened back. Speaking of Li Bonian and Han Yu, they were both deputy lieutenants from the 7th rank. There was competition between the two and they disliked each other. Ever since Han Yu was promoted to deputy lieutenant, he and Han Yu had been estranged from each other. This time he was assigned such a task. It has nothing to do with Li Bonian. Li, don't be so arrogant. We, adults, are naturally capable when we sit in this position. If we are not as good as some people, we are just useless idiots. What else can we do besides frame up behind our backs? Lu Kang has a fiery personality, and he followed Han Yu as soon as he entered the military camp. He had already been subdued by Han Yu. They suffered a lot when they went out this time, so when they saw Li Bonian ridiculing them, they counterattacked unceremoniously. Who are you talking about? Who is a fool? Lu Kang, you stupid bear, you were bribed by others casually, and you volunteered to be used as a gunman. Are you stupid? You have no real ability, someone is just a flatterer. It's only because he is more capable that he got the position he is in now. What a big deal, Li Bonian's confidant said sarcastically to Lu Kang, expressing his disdain for Han Yu. Not only Lu Kang, but several other Han Yu subordinates were very angry when they saw Li Bonian's arrogance. They wanted to argue with him, but Han Yu stopped him. Han Yu is not giving in, but it is not the time to confront Li Bonian yet. Although Li Bonian is from the 7th grade like him, he has been operating in this area for many years and has a deep foundation. Not to mention that there are hundreds of adults covering his head. It is definitely not a wise move to confront him. Han Yu was still very authoritative in front of his subordinates. After speaking out, Lu Kang and others obeyed Han Yu's instructions even though they were angry. They couldn't help it when they returned to the camp. Sir, why are you stopping us? That Li guy looks like a smug villain. I am so angry when I see him. I wish I could beat him up. He is so shameless. You framed me behind my back, and you dared to come to us. You just rely on your relationship with Li, the captain. You bastard. Okay, there is nothing to be angry about. Li Boyan has been in the military camp for so many years. He has a deep foundation and is protected by people above. We will definitely suffer if we confront him rashly. It is better to endure the anger for a while and wait for the opportunity. Sooner or later, I will vent our anger for us, Han Yu made a promise to himself and several subordinates. He also had absolute confidence that sooner or later, he would trample all of them under his feet. We listen to you, sir. Several people knew this truth and believed in Han Yu. Sir Han always did what he said and never broke his promise to them. This is one of the reasons why they swore to follow him to death. Feng Han was the one who replaced Zhao Changping. Following his old boss's instructions, he didn't want to make things difficult for Han Yu. However, he didn't have the final say on many things. He was happy to see Han Yu and the others return safely, so he granted them a day off to go back and rest.